Ancient humans never went for a run, never hit a step count, never blocked out 45 minutes for cardio, never did a single set of anything. Deliberate exercise, separate from just staying alive, didn't exist for almost all of human history, and they were in dramatically better physical condition than most people alive today. This isn't speculation. Bone density in pre-agricultural populations consistently beats modern bone density. The rough patches on bone where muscles anchor are more pronounced in ancient skeletons, meaning bigger, stronger muscles than modern equivalents. And this wasn't some elite athletic subset. These were ordinary people with no special nutrition or lighter workloads. Their bones make the average modern gym-goer look sedentary by comparison. So how does a species with no gym and no jogging shoe end up fitter than one with both? The answer is a complete reframe of what exercise actually is, and why the modern version is a surprisingly poor substitute for what it replaced. Start with a distinction most people never make. Modern exercise is deliberate activity performed specifically for fitness, scheduled, separate from the rest of your life, with a clear start and end. Everything else, the sitting, the driving, the desk work, isn't exercise, it's just everything else. Ancient physical activity worked completely differently. Walking to where you needed to go, carrying what you needed to carry, moving through varied terrain, lifting, climbing, crouching, all day, every day. Ancient humans had essentially zero modern exercise and essentially unlimited physical activity, and those two things aren't biologically equivalent, even at matched calorie burn. The human body evolved for continuous activity as the baseline, not sedentary life punctuated by workouts. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the most studied living forager populations, give us the closest real analog. Men walk roughly 15 to 19 kilometers a day while foraging, women 9 to 12. But the walking itself isn't the real story. Foraging terrain isn't a flat sidewalk. It's slopes, loose ground, and dense vegetation demanding constant balance and shifting muscle recruitment. Squatting to inspect tracks, climbing for elevated resources, reaching overhead for fruit. That variety is the actual point, a musculoskeletal system built for a huge, constantly shifting vocabulary of movement, not repetitive single-plane reps at fixed resistance. Load-bearing adds another dimension almost completely absent from modern life. Carrying food, water, children, and tools recruits trunk and shoulder stabilizers in ways unloaded walking doesn't, and it shows up clearly as bone hypertrophy in the archaeological record. Here's where it gets genuinely counterintuitive, and it's the part almost nobody in fitness culture actually talks about. A hard exercise session triggers an acute stress response. Heart rate spikes, cortisol and adrenaline surge, and recovery afterward drives the adaptation. More muscle, denser bone, better cardiovascular capacity. But chronic, moderate activity, the kind ancient humans lived in constantly, sends an entirely different signal. Not prepare for a spike, but stay ready for continuous use. That signal turns out to be the primary driver of mitochondrial biogenesis, the foundation of metabolic health, and the primary maintainer of resting heart rate, arterial flexibility, and bone density across the entire skeleton, not just the parts a specific workout hits. Most people who exercise regularly still spend most of their waking hours sedentary, and research is consistent. People who get activity from daily life outperform people who exercise the same amount but sit through the rest of the day. This isn't an argument against exercise. Strength and cardio gains from structured training are real. It's that they were never designed to replace a signal the body used to receive around the clock. If this is the kind of story you love, this channel drops a new deep dive like this every single week, so subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. Childhood physical activity deserves specific attention because it explains why ancient humans never needed exercise and why modern kids increasingly do. Traditional childhood meant running, climbing, wrestling, throwing, hours a day of unstructured outdoor movement with an incredibly rich vocabulary. Bone is most responsive to loading during growth, meaning active childhoods build bone density and geometry. Passive ones simply can't replicate later. And cardiovascular baseline and coordination follow the same pattern. Ancient children weren't organized into activity, they just defaulted to movement because nothing else competed for unoccupied time. Modern children are inactive at historically unprecedented levels, and the long-term consequences are only now becoming visible. Sleep is the other piece almost never connected to any of this. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the stage most tied to physical restoration and growth hormone release, is measurably more abundant after a day of sustained moderate activity than after a sedentary day. And that hormone is what actually drives the muscle repair and bone remodeling that maintain physical capacity. The relationship runs both directions. Activity improves sleep, and better sleep improves recovery from activity. The modern pattern, sedentary days, a single workout, then disrupted sleep from screens and irregular schedules, breaks both sides of that loop at once. There's a cognitive dimension too, and it might be the most surprising piece of all. Sustained moderate activity drives release of BDNF, a protein researchers have nicknamed Miracle-Gro for the brain, which supports new neuron growth specifically in the hippocampus, the region most responsible for learning and memory. Ancient humans were flooding their brains with this continuously, supporting exactly the spatial reasoning and working memory that foraging and hunting demanded in the first place, a genuinely circular loop. Sitting at a desk doesn't trigger any of it, and the documented consequences of chronic sedentary life, reduced hippocampal volume, faster cognitive aging, elevated dementia risk, line up exactly with what you'd predict from a brain starved of a signal it evolved to expect constantly. Posture matters just as much, and gets discussed even less. Modern sedentary life means hours a day with hips flexed near 90 degrees, spine curved forward, shoulders rounded, a position the body was never designed to hold that long, and it reliably produces hip flexor shortening, weak posterior chains, and the spinal dysfunction behind some of the most common medical complaints in the developed world. Ancient humans rested in constantly varied positions, squatting, sitting on the ground, kneeling. The full deep squat specifically, hips below the knees, heels flat, shows up as the default resting posture across forager and traditional societies worldwide. Maintaining hip, ankle, and thoracic mobility, most modern adults have simply lost from decades in chairs. Nobody needed a mobility routine when daily life already maintained mobility on its own. So what does this actually mean for how modern people should think about fitness? Structured exercise is a compensatory adaptation, an attempt to deliver in short compressed doses what the body evolved to receive continuously. It works, but only partially. Research on incidental daily movement, walking, standing, fidgeting, carrying, consistently shows this background activity matters as much for metabolic health as formal workouts, and for some outcomes even more. Sitting for 8 hours and exercising for 1 is measurably worse than walking all day and never formally exercising at all, because the two signals aren't different in quantity, they're different in kind. Ancient humans didn't need exercise because their entire life already was exercise, not as a periodic intense stimulus, but as a continuous moderate background running every waking hour. The foraging, the carrying, the squatting, the walking, none of it was a fitness routine, it was survival. And the physical capacity it built was simply a byproduct. Modern humans need exercise because modern life removed that continuous baseline and replaced it with sitting the body was never built for. The workout is an attempt to compensate. It's better than nothing. It was never as good as the thing it replaced. The ancient human wasn't a fitness enthusiast, just a person whose life required their body to work. And 10,000 years later, their skeleton is still impressing the people digging it up.